Thank you, Olya. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And yeah, thank you so much to all of you for coming here to hear more about what we're doing to conserve cheetahs in the beautiful wilderness of Botswana. So, as you can probably tell, I'm originally from England. My parents are both English, and I was born there, but we left when I was only 2 years old. And my parents thought it would be a wonderful idea to raise me in some different countries all over the world, and particularly in some really remote countries like Somalia and Papua New Guinea. So I grew up sort of in the bush, as we say, far from towns and civilization, and with sort of more animals as friends than people. I sort of had pet chameleons and a baby antelope we raised, and my neighbors had a baby serval cat that I helped to care for. So all of these interactions with these beautiful wildlife species really sort of early on kind of made me love wildlife and wild places. As Olya says, my mother was a huge influence, bringing me up with fabulous environmental values to care for different cultures, for beautiful habitats and wild animals. And I think what really sort of brought it home to me was when I would go back to my native England to visit all of the aunties and uncles and family over there. We would go back once a year. And I would see the difference between a really wild place that I was lucky enough to live in and a very developed place. We would go for walks in the forest, and it would be so beautiful, and I would love it. But we'd get to the end, and there would be a road, or there would be a town. And I realized, that I loved wilderness, that I really wanted to dedicate my life to conserving wild places, and the threatened species that call them home. So I got a degree in wildlife biology. I did a few projects in different countries, Thailand and Malaysia, but I had lived in Africa before, and so I was really drawn back there. And the name Botswana had always called me. I always thought Botswana's one of the last wildernesses as well. I want to go to that place. And so I got an opportunity to go and work in a reserve in southern Botswana, and I, as Olya said, met those two beautiful cheetah brothers who basically inspired me to start the Cheetah Project, Cheetah Conservation Botswana. And we're lucky enough to work in this wonderful land. Botswana, I'm sure you know, is a country in southern Africa, right in the center. It's about the size of France or Texas. The country does have some wonderful conservation credentials. We have 21% of our land is actually protected areas, as you can see from the Central Kalahari Game Reserve and these other parks. And we specifically work in the Western Kalahari. And this is where we find the most cheetahs in Botswana. And this is actually our research camp here in the Western Kalahari. And we're based outside of protected areas because that's where you find most of the cheetahs. About 76% of Africa's cheetahs are actually found outside protected areas. They're very wide-ranging, low-density animals that need large areas to roam. So we cannot rely on protected areas alone. So we work on the farmland regions of Botswana in this beautiful Kalahari region. The Kalahari is this incredibly expansive area in Botswana. It's not actually a desert, it's a semi-arid savanna lands and also bushlands as well. And we have some of the most important populations of some of Africa's most threatened carnivores. We have one of the highest populations of cheetahs left in the world, leopards, wild dogs, and also lions. And the Western Kalahari is an important strategic area. It's a corridor region between the two protected areas that I showed you on the map and also through into Namibia. So a very important area to be conserved. And we can really see how important Botswana is in terms of the range of cheetahs. In fact, the sort of greenish yellow is the cheetahs' range in 1900. They ranged all throughout southern Africa, up into North Africa, Arabian Peninsula, down even into India and Central Asia. And we estimate there was about 100,000 cheetahs at that time. And due to loss of habitat, declining prey populations, increasing human-wildlife conflict, the cheetahs have declined, their range has retracted significantly. In 2007, we estimated there was about 10,000 cheetahs left in the world. So that was a 90% decline in just 100 years. And it's a shame to report also that just last year we finished the more recent range-wide assessment, and now the global population of cheetahs is 7,100. So they are still declining. But one thing I am happy to report is the cheetah population in Botswana has remained stable. So through the adequate habitat, the low human population, a government that's very committed to conserving its wildlife resource, and hopefully some of the activities of Cheetah Conservation Botswana and other fabulous NGOs, we're working hard to conserve them, and we've managed to maintain the population at 2,000 cheetahs. So we have 30% of the world's cheetahs left today. So, and being in the middle of the southern African range of cheetahs, it really is strategic that we make sure that Botswana's cheetah population is conserved. And of course, it's not just about cheetahs. Cheetahs are an ideal flagship species for the Kalahari ecosystem. If we can conserve cheetahs as a high-level carnivore, we know that the other animals on which they're dependent and the habitat which they're dependent is conserved as well. They're a fantastic indicator species. And they're very charismatic, beautiful animals. The fastest land animal on Earth. They really have the power to inspire and engender pride, in people around the world and also people in Botswana. So being this charismatic animal, they make a fabulous flagship for our organization and for the Kalahari itself. And they need large areas to survive. As I mentioned, we cannot rely on protected areas to conserve adequate numbers of cheetahs. They exist in low densities in these areas. They do live in low densities to avoid sort of stronger carnivores such as lions and hyenas. And so they need conservation over large landscapes, not just reliant on the protected areas, but looking outside where we find the most cheetahs. And in Botswana, most of the people in Botswana of which the cheetahs coexist are livestock farming communities. So the biggest threat to cheetahs today is actually human-carnivore conflict. Cheetahs will coexist, will live and share the land with farming communities, and they will occasionally take unprotected livestock. And due to livestock losses, farming communities will do retaliatory killings because they don't want, obviously, their livelihoods to be in threat. So, the fastest land animal on Earth will often be seen as nothing more than a threat to their livestock and their livelihoods. And this is causing sort of one of the reasons why we see so many declines in the cheetah populations today, and is the biggest threat to cheetahs in Botswana. In the 1960s, the EU supported Botswana to increase their beef industry, and so they went through and they sunk deep boreholes throughout the Kalahari so that we have permanent livestock farming settlements there now. So the conflict has increased significantly over the last 50 years. So that's one of the key things that Cheetah Conservation Botswana needs to do. We need to make sure that we reduce these threats and that we promote coexistence and we support communities to live together with cheetahs and other carnivores. So we've set up a multidisciplinary conservation program incorporating scientific research, community outreach for the farming communities, and education for the youth as well. Our scientific research program is really focused, as I mentioned, outside the protected areas to better understand the movements, the behaviors, the ecology, the needs, the conservation requirements of cheetahs outside of protected areas. What do we need to conserve them? And what kinds of information can we give back to the communities that live together with them to make sure that they can better understand who they're living with? And of course, where we work, it can be quite bushy environments. The cheetahs are under conflict with people, so they're not very easy to see. So we have to use a lot of remote methods to survey them. We need to understand how many there are in different areas, where they are, what kind of home ranges they're having, and that will also enable us to monitor their trends over time and also be able to focus in which areas are really strategic for their conservation. So in the Kalahari, we have these fantastic roads, which everything that crosses the sandy roads will leave their tracks and impressions. So we use spoor tracking to count cheetahs and find out where cheetahs are. And we use the skills of these fabulous Kalahari San people, the Bushmen, who are able to, sort of understand so much about the environment by reading these signs on the ground. We also use camera traps, remotely triggered cameras. So when the animal passes by, it takes a photo. We put camera traps on water holes, on roads, but particularly on these marking trees. Marking trees are a very important part of cheetah ecology. It's like an information board or sort of a bar where all the cheetahs in the area will visit from time to time. And they leave their scats there and they'll mark them. And all the cheetahs can learn who's in the area and what they're up to by visiting these marking trees. This is one of the cameras that we had up at the marking tree, so you can see how cheetahs do actually climb. And they'll climb these low branches to get up and leave their mark. And this is a very important tool as well, because we're able to show to farmers that if they remove cheetahs, they're just opening up a vacant territory for another one to move in. It can actually increase the numbers of cheetahs on their land. If they leave the territorial animals that they have at these marking trees, then they have just one or two cheetahs in the area, and their conflict can be reduced because they will keep the other cheetahs in the area out of that territory. So better the devil you know, and understanding the animals that you're living with. And it gives us a lot of other information as well about other wildlife in the area, other carnivores, interactions, prey species, etc. So we can really get a good idea of the biodiversity in these areas and the behaviors and interactions between other carnivores as well. Up the marking trees, the cheetahs leave their scat. We collect the scat, and we analyze the scat, and we find out what the cheetahs are eating. A lot of farmers will think this cheetah's just living on my land, eating my wildlife, eating my livestock. And we were able to show that actually 6% of cheetah's diet are actually made up of livestock. They may be living in areas that have a lot of livestock, much more livestock than wildlife in the area, but they're still selecting for the wildlife. So protect your animals, protect your livestock. The cheetahs will eat wild prey. We also use the services of scat detection dogs. We've actually sort of pioneered the use of training a local dog to detect cheetah scat, much how sort of detection dogs work in airports, etc. And this is our scat detection dog, Lueto, who's just found a cheetah scat in the environment, who's getting his reward. And satellite collars as well. We need to understand the cheetah's spatial needs. What kind of areas are they utilizing, how large are their home ranges, etc. So we will collar cheetahs in different areas to find out the size of the areas they're utilizing. And, we found out really interesting things. I mean, an average cheetah home range can be at about 800 square miles. They're roaming over large areas. And they can travel up to sort of 5 miles a day. So we give that information back to the farmers. They're not just sitting on your farm eating your livestock. They're moving over large areas. Don't leave your livestock vulnerable, and the cheetahs will move on. So all of this information from the scientific research goes back into our community outreach programs, and this is really key to what we do. We need to raise the awareness of and the knowledge of people in these areas, in the Kalahari, so they know more about cheetahs and other carnivores, and they're better able to coexist. And we knew this because there's a lot of ways that you can coexist with cheetahs. If you utilize the most appropriate forms of farming, then you can coexist by using effective livestock enclosures, using livestock guarding dogs, breeding seasons, donkeys. All of these techniques are proven to reduce conflict between people and cheetahs and other carnivores. So we promote all of this information to our communities. We do this through support visits. People can call us if they have a problem. We'll go there, we'll talk to them about what problems they're having, and we'll give them advice as to what kind of methods they can implement to reduce their losses. We have farmers' workshops. We can be called to a settlement, to a village, and we'll go there, we'll sit down with everybody, and we'll give them that information and talk to them about their challenges and issues and help them to solve them. And then we'll also invite farmers back to our training center. At our site in the Western Kalahari, we're on a sustainably run cattle farm. The farm manager there uses all of these sustainable livestock management practices. He's wildlife friendly, he doesn't kill carnivores. We're able to demonstrate all these things. So they can learn directly from the farmers themselves who are doing it on the farm that we're on. And we also have a small stock goats and sheep demonstration farm where we show people how to train livestock guarding dogs. Here's one of our dogs, Ghost. She's very good because she can sort of hide amongst the goats and you don't see her. And we bring puppies, unwanted puppies, puppies from either villages and no one wants them, or animal shelters, and we bring the puppies here, and Ghost and our other livestock guarding dogs train the puppies how to look after the goats and sheep. They go in at 8 weeks, they bond with the livestock, they go out with them into the bush, and they aggressively protect them from harm. We've placed about 75 livestock guarding dogs, and we've found that farmers who've been experiencing conflict and have livestock guarding dogs have a reduction in 86% of their livestock losses. So a very effective tool. This is one of our livestock guarding dog recipients, Naomi Tarumba. She had a small livestock herd. She's a single mother. She's got 3 children. She was really, really struggling because she kept having losses from jackals and cheetahs of her livestock herd. It wasn't growing, and she had very little livelihood. We placed 2 livestock guarding dogs with her, and over the last 2 years, she's been able to increase the size of her goat herd and sell off the excess number. And through the money she's made, she's been able to buy a house, she's been able to get electricity, buy all the vaccinations for her livestock, etc., and spend more time with her children. So it really does help people to improve their livelihood. And here's her fabulous dog, all grown up and well cared for. And this is, so dogs saving cats. That's a really exciting kind of mantra that we have. And this is Piri. She's actually one of our livestock guarding dogs. This year she passed away at 9 years old, but she trained about 55 livestock guarding dog puppies in how to protect the goats and sheep. And we estimate that one livestock guarding dog can protect about 30 cheetahs. It will stop potential of about 30 cheetahs coming through and causing depredation events to farmers. So really a fabulous, effective tool. Of course, their care is very important to us. We make sure we monitor them monthly to make sure that they're being well cared for. We provide free vaccinations, free sterilizations once a year to all of our livestock guarding dog network members to make sure the dogs are in great condition. And all of these livestock guarding dog folks, people that have been to our farmers' workshops, they can join our farmers' network. And this is an opportunity to farmers who are utilizing great methods to be able to share that information with each other. So rather than us going out and saying this is a great way to do things, now the farmers themselves are sharing that information with each other. And we organize exchange visits so they can go and visit each other's farms and see how they're coexisting effectively with wildlife. And a new program we've started this year is with the Kalahari San. Amazing people. They're not livestock farmers, as in many of the people in Botswana are. These guys were hunter-gatherers, and in 2014, Botswana banned hunting, so they have no livelihoods now. We've got 2 communities that we're working with in this corridor region between the Central Kalahari Game Reserve and the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. This is a really strategic movement corridor, and these 2 settlements, Bere and Kakai, we're working together with them to map their natural resources, see what kinds of livelihood opportunities they would like to see for themselves, and then working together with other NGOs to help facilitate that so that their livelihoods can be improved. And we want to create a tourism route so that people can drive between these 2 protected areas, and the communities along the way can set up community campsites, craft productions, places to eat, etc. So they can actually start to benefit from living together with some of these wildlife species. So I now want to hand over to a fabulous friend of mine. Oh, these are the participatory planning meetings we have with communities. Very colorful and beautiful. So Yes, I now want to hand over to a great friend and colleague of mine. She joined Cheetah Conservation Botswana in 2009, previously worked with Australia Zoo, and much like me, I always say that I didn't necessarily choose cheetahs, but they chose me. The same happened for Jane. Whilst working at Australia Zoo, she was promoted to the cheetah keeper, fell in love with cheetahs, and got inspired to come over and volunteer with us, and we thought she was so fantastic that we offered her a position. So please welcome Jane Horgan.
Yeah, it's been a dream come true, and they just keep renewing my contract. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for having me, everybody. It's lovely to see your happy faces. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our education programs, which are a great inspiration at CCB. So, in terms of wildlife, Botswana is just the jewel of the continent. I mean, we have some of the largest populations of not only cheetah, but lion, African wild dog, brown hyenas, obviously elephants as well. So the richness and the diversity of wildlife in Botswana is absolutely incredible. So it's really surprising that environmental education doesn't make up a formal part of the curriculum in Botswana's schools. And that's really sad that they're not promoting the sustainable use and the conservation of Botswana's rich natural resources. So we make it a big part of our work to go into the schools and to create this environmental education so that the next generation of conservationists, or the young generation of conservationists, can know all about conservation and already start making their impact in the conservation of Botswana's wildlife. So we go into the schools themselves and we pass on our core messages about cheetahs, about the threat of human-wildlife conflict, and how even kids can make a difference in trying to protect the cheetahs of Botswana. Sometimes we go to schools in the towns. Sometimes we go to the schools in the rural villages. The classrooms look a little bit different in those rural areas, but the kids absolutely love the messages that we bring to them. We also conduct after-school programs, which are similar to the school visits, but involve a much more holistic and more involved curriculum. So we're not just talking about cheetahs and human-wildlife conflict, but a lot of the other large carnivores and the other conservation issues that we have in Botswana. So the kids get a really good sense of the overall importance of looking after the environment. We use games and fun activities with the kids to help reinforce our core messages and help them to remember it. And you can see that they absolutely love the games and the curriculum that we provide for them. For me, the highlight of the after-school program is the fact that we take the kids into the wildlife areas. So thanks to a very generous donation from Lataka Safaris in Botswana, we were able to take over 100 children into Marami Game Reserve, one of the best wildlife places on the planet, and they got to experience the wildlife experience. And it's crazy because a lot of these kids have grown up and they live on the edge of the Okavango Delta. So one of the most beautiful wildlife places in the entire world. World Heritage Site, beautiful protected area. And yet they've never seen a lion, they've never seen an elephant. And it blows my mind. So this is Hofeone. She's 9 years old. And this is the exact moment when she saw an elephant for the first time. And this photo, and that moment, this makes me go on when I have those tough days, you know? This was just so special. I mean, all she knew of elephants before this point was her uncle who had crops, and the elephants would occasionally come in and steal and damage his crops. So all she knew about elephants up until this point was negative things. And then she had this experience. So this creates a positive association between wildlife and the kids that has the ability to completely change their lives. I mean, it's experiences like this that could turn them into the next Shivani or the next, Colleen or the next conservationist, that changes the world. So for me, this is a really special part of what we do. We also conduct environmental bush camps. We have a fantastic facility in the Kalahari where the kids can come and spend 4 days with us in the bush. And that's a really great way for them to learn all about the animals and the environment in which, the Kalahari involves. And again, we use fun activities to help reinforce the messages, which the kids really dig. We get them really dirty in that good Kalahari dirt as well, which they love. But by far the highlight of the camp for the kids is the pool. Not only because it's 110 degrees outside, but a lot of these kids have never actually been in a pool. So we have to make sure, especially with the younger kids, that we don't fill the pool the whole way, because they need to be able to touch the bottom when they go in. But the kids absolutely love it, so do our staff. This is our education intern, Seho, and I can't begrudge her going in the pool when it's that hot. Sometimes we need this to cool off. But as well as the student education that we do, we also do education for the general public. So we use information stalls at important cultural events and important agricultural shows around the country in order to open up dialogue between ourselves and the farming communities that are dealing with cheetahs on a day-to-day basis. So that's a really great way for us to learn what the problems are on the ground and help spread our message a little bit further. So Rebecca mentioned that the majority of cheetahs occur outside of protected areas, and you can see from our education work and our community outreach work that we mostly deal with people. It's actually quite rare for us to see cheetahs in our day-to-day work, which is the great irony of it. I got into this industry because I love cheetahs and I never see them. But every now and then we get an amazing opportunity to make a direct difference and help a cheetah directly. So we give cheetahs second chances. So whether that they're injured, they've been injured by a snare, or they've been hit by a car, or they've been orphaned when their mother has been killed by a livestock farmer, we step in and help give those animals a second chance. So in this scenario, it was the middle of the drought. Botswana got hit very badly with the drought. Last year, it was sort of hit its peak. And when there's drought, we get peaks in human-wildlife conflict. And so within the space of a week, we had 8 cheetahs come into our care, and cheetahs that had been trapped by farmers, and the farmers had said, "You take these cats or we're going to shoot them." They had reached their limit, they had tried non-lethal techniques, nothing had worked, and they couldn't handle it anymore. So we had 8 cheetahs on our hands. This is the cubs that belong to a beautiful female cheetah called Sididi. And then we had a coalition of newly independent adults, 2 males and a female. Bohali was the male that we ended up collaring. So we released all 8 of these cheetahs into a beautiful habitat that we managed to find in the Okavango Delta. Just within 2 kilometers of each other, we released the 2 coalitions. This is Bohali, and I believe that's his sister. Yeah. So we released them into the Okavango Delta. Beautiful habitat. There wasn't too many lions in the area, so it was a really great place for them to call home. Now, being much more intelligent, Sididi, as a female, decided that, yes, this is a lovely habitat. I think I'm going to hang around. And so she raised her cubs there on the western side of the Okavango Delta, and that's her area in the black. That's where she called home after we released her. And she did incredibly well. She raised those cubs up until they were independent, and she still remains there to this day. So if you go and visit the Delta, be sure to stay at Pom Pom's camp. That's where she's hanging out these days. Now, Bohali and his brother, we assume that the female went off by her own soon after they were released. Those boys decided to go on a little bit of an adventure. This is where they roamed after we left them. Now, just to put this in a bit of context, this area here is the densest livestock population in Botswana. So when they left the Delta and headed into those areas, we were stressing out. We were really stressing out. We didn't think that there was any chance that they would survive moving back and forth across these areas. We thought for sure they were going to come into conflict, but they didn't, and they managed to survive. I think it was about 15 months that they were going back and forth. I mean, that area, that's about 200 miles difference there, and they were going back continuously. Anyway, after about 14 months, they found a lovely little spot down here on the Namibian side in an area called the Cheetah Conservancy, a wildlife area, a protected area, and we were so excited that finally these boys would be safe. Unfortunately, after a while, Bohali's collar stopped moving, and we overlaid the GPS points and the map that we had with Google Earth, and we saw that he had moved south out of the conservancy, the first time he'd ever done it. And there was the only cattle post within about 50 miles in any direction, the only place with livestock in the whole area. And then his collar stopped moving. So we drove there. It took us about 12 hours to drive there, across the border into Namibia. And we found the cattle post, we found the collar, we found his body in a hole, burnt. And I spoke to the farmer and I said, you know, what happened? And he said, no, he lost one goat, just one. Sorry. I mean, that didn't need to happen. It shouldn't have happened. One goat for one of the most endangered animals on the planet. It shouldn't have happened. So of all the area that they crossed, of all of the cattle posts and the livestock areas in Botswana that they traveled through, we know that people can coexist with these animals. We've spread our message of coexistence to these farmers. They know how to do it. It works. If they make a little bit of effort, they protect their livestock, they can coexist with these animals. But it only takes one farmer to end the life of a cheetah. So we need to get our message out to more people, more farmers. And we can do it. We're bettering the lives of these people, not just the cheetahs. And we can help create an ecosystem where we can all live together. And that's our goal. And that's what we've been able to achieve with the help of WCN, with the help of you guys. I mean, from WCN, we get over 50% of our annual running costs. So if it wasn't for the support of you guys, we wouldn't be able to achieve all this stuff that we've been able to achieve. So on behalf of myself, Rebecca, the whole team at CCB, all of the communities we work with, and all of these beautiful, beautiful cats, Ke'ele bo hatata, thank you very much.